Coming up on 2020 on ID, it's a nightmare come true. A stranger bursts in, bringing terror.
I know where Janine Ford lives, so she's dead.
He's basically hunting me.
From a stalker lurking outside.
I'm in front of his truck. Come here, let me know.
They found duct tape in the car, they found oil, they found a leather mask.
To an intruder that bursts inside.
I did everything I was supposed to do. I locked the door. I had 2 deadbolts. Please, God, just help me. Please help me.
Women who triumph in the face of sudden danger.
He was pointing the gun, and I just immediately screamed at the top of my lungs. I was scared to death. I'm dying. This is it. I just knew I was going to die.
Stories of survival when a stranger threatens. Welcome to 2020 on ID. I'm John Quinones. A stranger spying on you, tracking you at home, at work, everywhere you go. A stalker. It's been estimated that 1 in 6 women will face this frightening experience at some point in their lives. Television news anchor Janine Ford had that experience. In 2001, Jay Shaler met with both Janine and the man who was fixated on her, giving us a rare and chilling look inside the minds of both the victim and stalker.
And good morning, everyone. It is 5:30. Welcome to 12 News Today, where you get more for your mornings. We're glad you're with us this morning.
Every day, anchorwoman Janine Ford delivers a sunny welcome to her Phoenix, Arizona audience. And every day, just behind that warm invitation, lies the chilling reality that someone is watching her much too closely.
I'm terrified of this person. He's basically hunting me, and he's basically hunting my children.
The man Janine is scared of is someone she has never spoken to, never met. But she says a stalker has haunted her days, stolen her freedom, and threatened her life.
911, what is your emergency?
Threats like this.
I know where Janine Ford lives, so she's dead.
You feel really trapped. I mean, that person is out there all the time, and they're there, and they're there, and they're there. And you don't know them. They're a stranger.
That stranger is a 37-year-old unemployed factory worker named Gabriel Espinoza. I met him at the Maricopa County Jail, where he was being temporarily held on charges of stalking Janine Ford.
You've scared her deeply. Do you know that?
Now I figure I did, so.
What's to prevent that from happening again, Mr. Espinoza?
Well, that's what I'm afraid of. I'm just afraid of it happening again.
Like many, if not most celebrity stalkers, Espinoza is clinically psychotic. Daily medication softens his speech and manner and quiets the voices he sometimes hears in his head.
And that's when I heard the good voice, the bad voice. But I couldn't tell what they were saying. It just, I just hear the voices.
Good voice, bad voice.
Yeah. But I couldn't understand what they were saying to me. And
how did you know that one was good and one was bad?
One was real soft-spoken, the other one was real, like in anger.
Espinoza's delusions have been captured in hours of videotaped interviews with police interrogators.
You know, I watch TV and I flip through stations, so I gotta see her. She still plays games through the TV, so.
What kind of games?
Color-coded, hand signs.
Oh, yeah.
Listen as he explains how Janine Ford has been sending him secret signals through the clothes and jewelry she wears on the air.
You know, one day she'll have a green pin, the next day she'll have a white pin, the next time she'll have a red pin. She thinks she's sending them to me, but she's forgetting other people are watching.
The love obsessional stalker is usually someone who is mentally ill, like Gabriel.
Dr. Jack Potts, the chief forensic psychiatrist for the Maricopa County Courts, has examined Gabriel Espinoza repeatedly.
With Janine Ford, she has a right to be worried. This is not a pleasant experience. It's like being terrorized. It is being terrorized.
In this case, the target of that terror once lived a charmed life.
Do you regret being a celebrity?
Sometimes, yeah.
I bet.
Oh, yeah.
Many times.
Janine Ford was raised on a ranch near Phoenix. In 1980, she was named Miss USA and later landed a number of small acting roles.
I just can't get it.
Before becoming a newscaster. But then Gabriel Espinoza began relentlessly waiting for her outside her TV station.
They told you you had to stay away from that station.
Yeah.
But you disregarded that.
Yeah, once.
Why?
I just couldn't get it out of my head of, you know, I just wanted to talk to her.
When was the first time you said to yourself, this is darker than I had imagined? This is real trouble.
When he started violating all the restraining orders, there's no stopping this guy.
Espinoza was now moving toward that shadowy line separating fan from fanatic. Janine recalls a stormy night when he seemed to cross it.
It was pouring down rain, and I was leaving and driving out, and my eyes look up, and as the gate's opening in this pouring rain, he's right there under the light post outside, and I have to turn left in front of him, and I just take off, and he's just standing there with the rain sheeting off him in a little tank top. I mean, he would just stand there staring at me.
But Gabriel Espinoza is nothing if not persistent. Only days after his rainy night visitation here to Channel 12, he's back. Janine is on the air delivering the 10 o'clock news, and Espinoza is delivering something too. In a large envelope, he has sealed an odd collection of his personal effects, including an expired driver's license, his divorce decree, and an empty 9mm bullet casing.
Why the bullet casing? What are you trying to tell her with that?
Oh, with that, like I told the doctor, it was just like just a little icebreaker or something, I guess.
A 9mm icebreaker. And something else.
They found a knife in your pocket.
I always carried a knife.
Always carried a knife?
Yeah.
For that incident, Espinoza serves 6 months in the Maricopa County Jail and 3 years of probation. But within weeks of completing his probation, Espinoza's old celebrity obsessions return.
Madonna.
In California, police arrest him outside Madonna's Beverly Hills recording studio.
What is it about celebrities that intrigues you?
Just, you always used to see them on TV. It's a big thrill when you see them in person. They're out of their environment. They're, you know, just like us, and anything could happen to them. And
anything, including death threats.
Stupid white bitch, Janine Ford. When you die.
Espinoza begins making threatening phone calls to Janine Ford and Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who are scheduled to appear together in a local parade. A few nights later, Espinoza calls in another threat from a payphone at a convenience store.
Let Arpaio know I know where Janine Ford lives, so she's dead.
Police quickly trace the call, and Gabriel is arrested again. But in his madness, he sees himself as the victim.
He's calling you a bitch. He's saying that, you know, you're sending him signals. You have ruined his life.
Right. And that chills me, but the biggest thing that just sends me over the edge is the thing with my voice.
In fact, Espinoza now has a name for one of the voices in his head, Austin. That's also the name of Janine's youngest son. For Janine, this means Espinoza's specter now haunts her whole family.
You know, you've ruined her life in a lot of ways. Do you know that?
Janine Ford's? In what way?
How can you imagine that you've ruined it?
Just her feeling insecure about somebody following her.
Absolutely.
If I wanted to harm her, I could have harmed her.
Those studies show that there is a very low incidence of stalkers like Gabriel actually committing violence. Sheriff Joe Arpaio says they are still causing great suffering.
I think words can kill, too, whether directly or indirectly.
He hasn't literally lifted a finger against her yet, but her life has changed.
Worst thing is putting people in fear. That's torture in itself, causing fear.
It's sad seeing her. I'll tell you that. It's sad to know that she is fearful.
And if she felt so threatened by me, why stay here?
Espinoza, at the end of the interview today, he implied that if you're really still concerned, maybe you're the one who should move.
Maybe he's right. That's the bad thing, is that, you know, I mean, that tells me that he's thinking he might not be stopping either, or he might not be able to stop. I mean, I've always been a compassionate person. I'm not one that, I don't want to see him dead. I don't want to see him, but I want him to go away. I just want him, you know, to go away.
Gabriel Espinoza will be out of circulation for at least a little while.
I would like to say I'm sorry for the things I've done to Miss Ford.
A judge committed him to the Arizona State Hospital until doctors say he is sane enough to leave. Espinoza then faces a lifetime on probation and supervised medication. But sooner or later, Gabriel Espinoza is likely to be returned to society. So Janine Ford carries a gun in fear of that day, believing that when Espinoza is back on the streets, she will be the one who feels imprisoned.
And so that's how it makes me feel. You feel trapped, you feel really angry, and it's like if he's out, I'm locked up and I'm in jail.
Janine Ford no longer anchors the local news in Phoenix. As of 2013, she says she's now working in marketing and communications. Gabriel Espinoza was released from the hospital and remains on lifetime probation. His movements and activities are closely monitored. When we come back, another stalker, and this one seems ready to act.
They found duct tape in the car, they found oil, they found a leather mask.
And the woman who decides to confront him face to face.
No! Don't do that!
Stay with us. You do if you discovered someone looking through your windows at night over and over again. Well, one young woman decided on a bold and most would say dangerous course of action. As Cynthia McFadden first reported in 2005, this is one woman's story of how she chose to deal with the man who was stalking her.
It's a nightmare for anyone living alone, being watched, snapshots through a window, capturing the life of 27-year-old Hannah Arbuckle, cooking, watching television, and even more intimate moments when Hannah thought she was alone.
I was looking at my window as I was reaching for a shirt thinking I need to shut the curtains. And right then, I see this man burst through the back gate and running full speed towards my window.
In the stranger's hand was a video camera.
He's running, slams the camera up against my window and just stays there. And
how frightened were you?
It's very frightening.
By the time police arrived, the man with the camera was gone, and so was Hannah's peace of mind. A fiercely independent single woman and a weekend triathlete, Hannah had just proudly bought her first home in this Indianapolis neighborhood. But over the next few months, her new life would become a waking nightmare as the same man returned again and again, and always at night. Hannah would call the police, but each time the peeping Tom vanished.
I remember one time I had left the TV on while I was asleep, and I rolled over to get my remote control to turn off the TV, and I saw him there in the window.
Did you fear that he was going to do more than look?
Yes, yes. My biggest fear going through this is that I would wake up one night and he would be in my bedroom or in my house.
She closed her blinds religiously, but the terrifying stranger began taking pictures through these high windows in her front door and peeking beneath the window shades. And one night was even seen sitting on her front porch. You'd had enough.
I guess, yeah, I definitely had enough.
Just after sunset on a mild October evening, 6 months after she first saw the man at her window, Hannah was on her way to her car when she and the peeping Tom came face to face for the first time.
We kind of look at each other for a bit, and he then put his hand in his pockets, turns around and walks away really quickly. I just didn't want him to get away. That was my whole mentality, is if he gets away this time, who knows what'll happen.
Hannah's reaction was instinctive, immediate, and everyone would later say, dangerous.
I chased him down the street, and that's when I said, stop running, and he did. So I asked him, I said, why are you looking in my windows? And he said, I don't know who you are, lady. And I said, yes, you do. I've seen you. The second I said that, his whole demeanor changed, and I run up to his truck, and I'm there, and I think, what do I do now?
I'm in front of his truck. Coming at me.
What's your name, ma'am?
Hannah Arbuckle. Stop it.
Had Hannah known the history of the stranger before her, she may never have done what she did next.
He ran into the cab of the truck and tried to drive it away, and I just got inside the back of it.
The man tore off, screeching through the suburban side streets with Hannah in the bed of his pickup truck.
He's driving really quickly down the street, and I'm on my cell phone with the police, and I'm trying to give landmarks as to where we're at.
Adam 434 Adam. Adam 434 Adam. Coordinate person power.
He turned down a side street and slammed on the brakes and gets out of the truck. And he's reaching and grabbing at me, and I'm kicking at him.
No! Don't do that!
I was scared. I truly was terrified at that time.
The police find her just in the nick of time. Hannah's peeping Tom had a name, Robert Braun, and a criminal record.
Robert Braun had been convicted of aggravated rape. He had spent 18 years in prison. He had been out just 2 years when he started stalking Hannah.
Carl Breezy is the county prosecutor in Indianapolis.
Was Robert Braun, in your opinion, working up to something much more serious than just watching Hannah?
No question. This was not a harmless high school prank. When he was arrested, they found duct tape in the car, they found oil, they found a leather mask. And so this was more than just peeping. He was working himself up. This was foreplay to commit a violent sex act.
So the police find in the truck lubricant, duct tape, and a mask.
Yeah.
They call it a rape kit.
When I found out about that information, that's when I was confronted with how naive I truly was going through this.
How much danger you were actually in.
I had no idea.
Had you ever seen a victim take circumstances quite this much into her own hands?
No, she acted on instinct. She's an incredibly heroic woman, but she's also very, very lucky. And that's the one point about this, is that jumping into the back of the car was something Hannah had to do out of desperation and fear. Certainly not something that we would encourage.
Was it the right decision to get in the truck?
Well, for my own personal safety, no. But everything happens for a reason, and I'm safe, I'm here today, and he's caught.
When police searched Braun's home, they found dozens of photographs of Hannah, taken over the course of 11 months. Some taken 5 months before she first even saw Braun at her window. In some pictures, Hannah is naked.
And you discovered that he was watching many times when you were unaware of it.
When people think of voyeurism, it's referred to a lot of peeping, that sort of thing. It's almost a comical joke. You know, someone's peeping Tom or looking in their windows. What people don't understand about the crime in and of itself is that although all of those times he never physically touched me, but I was violated. And I had my privacy taken from me. I had, my confidence actually taken away from me.
Robert Braun pled guilty to multiple counts of felony voyeurism. And even though he never physically harmed Hannah, because of his prior record and the photographs he took, Braun was hit with a 20-year sentence, 16 years suspended, with 4 years to be served in prison. Too tough? Hannah doesn't think so.
It was a bad situation. It wasn't just someone that was going to walk away. And I was in a lot of danger. And I truly was fortunate that everything stopped when it did.
Hannah Arbuckle and prosecutor Carl Breezy successfully pushed to get a bill passed in Indiana which toughened the laws against voyeurs. Her stalker, Robert Braun, was released in 2006 after serving only 18 months of his sentence. As of 2013, he's back in prison for violating his parole. Coming up, a killer on the run terrorizes a city.
Brian Nichols is considered armed and dangerous. Everybody is now working.
And the woman he takes hostage.
He was pointing the gun, and I just immediately screamed, "I'm dying. This is it."
Stay with us. The woman in our next story faced a terrifying situation. Ashley Smith was taken hostage by a man who had already killed 4 people. She thought he was going to kill her too, but she found a way to connect with him using a power she didn't know she had. As Deborah Roberts first reported in 2005, it began on a Friday morning in Atlanta, Georgia, where, unknown to Ashley Smith, a manhunt for a killer was gripping the city.
Brian Nichols is considered armed and dangerous. Everybody is now working on this case.
It all started during what was supposed to be a routine criminal case. The defendant, Brian Nichols, was standing trial for rape. Then, according to court reports, while being escorted to a courtroom, he suddenly overpowered his female guard, beat her unconscious, and took her gun. Authorities say he shot and killed the judge in the case and the court reporter. By the end of the day, Brian Nichols had allegedly gunned down 2 other men and was wanted for 4 murders in addition to the rape charges. The manhunt had become one of the largest in Georgia history, but the fugitive seemed to have vanished. Meanwhile, at this sprawling apartment complex 15 miles away, Ashley Smith, a waitress working 2 jobs, oblivious to the panic, was unpacking after moving to a small apartment. Around 2 a.m. Saturday morning, she went out for cigarettes, noticed a man in a parked pickup truck, and returned minutes later to discover he was still there.
So I come up, open the door, and I turn around, and he's right there.
And what did he do?
He was pointing the gun, and I just immediately screamed at the top of my lungs. The door's already open, so he just pushes me, pulls me back like this, and pulls me into the door.
The amazing story of what happened next is detailed in her book, Unlikely Angel.
What's going through your mind?
I was scared to death. I'm dying. This is it. I just knew I was going to die.
26 years old, she was recovering from a string of misfortunes and mistakes that had left her vulnerable, living alone without her young daughter. Terrified that Nichols would kill her at any moment, Ashley nervously began talking, telling her captor the story of her own difficult life. She showed Nichols snapshots from her childhood. Partially raised by religious grandparents, she was a high school athlete and a drug user. At 20, Ashley married Max Smith, and soon Paige was born. The young couple partied hard and ran in the fast lane. Then, during a brawl, Mac was stabbed to death.
So he died right there?
He died in my arms.
She told Nichols how her life had plunged into a haze of drugs and pain, something he could relate to. Nichols was also raised in a middle-class home, had played college football, and watched his life spin out of control.
As long as I could hear myself talking, I knew I was alive.
Wally Zines is a former hostage negotiator with the New York Police Department.
He knew he had problems. She knew she had problems. She found a way to get to him that was going to be able to put both of them on a very neutral basis. He looked at her as an angel from God.
Ashley's tragic life story seemed to be having an effect on Nichols. Then a startling question. He asked if she had any marijuana.
I said, no, I don't have any, but I have something else.
She offered him ice, the street name for methamphetamine, a powerful stimulant.
You gave this man drugs? I mean, what were you thinking?
When those words came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, what did I just say? Are you stupid? I've just killed myself. I was scared to death. I said, if it makes him as crazy as it makes me, I'm about to die right now.
Surprisingly, Ashley says, the drugs seemed to have no outward effect on Nichols. Then what happened next was a defining moment in her personal fight against addiction.
And he said, you're not going to do it with me? And I looked at him boldly and said, no, I'm a drug addict, and that stuff has ruined my life.
So that was a turning point.
Huge. For me to be able to stand up to somebody and say, I'm not doing it, and here's why.
She says she was taking 30 pain pills a day until she discovered ice.
I did more drugs, and I did more drugs, and I did more drugs.
But part of me was just, I've had enough. Ashley is tail spinning down.
Ashley's aunt, Kim Rogers, finally stepped in, taking legal custody of 2-year-old Paige.
And you took Paige and started to raise her?
Yeah, we did.
And my parents, or my mom and my aunt, put me in the hospital, mental hospital for 3 days. I was choosing the drugs over my daughter. And I think from then on, knowing that I made that choice was tough for me. Because I was choosing something over her. And I struggled with it to hide that pain, to hide the pain of you are such a sorry person that you're going to choose drugs over her. And I kept doing it to hide it more.
Ashley, scrawny and disheveled, was living alone after her third attempt at rehab, finding happiness only during her twice-monthly visits with her daughter. She says the drugs were still a constant temptation until she was taken captive by Nichols.
I was a prisoner, but I was free when I said no to the drugs. It was kind of like, I can breathe.
You talked constantly about your daughter.
Constantly. I remember saying, I've got to see my daughter tomorrow. Am I going to be able to? And the first response out of his mouth at first was no. And I'm telling him, please don't hurt me. I have a little girl that doesn't have a daddy. Her daddy died.
She would repeat that plea throughout the night, desperate to keep her 9:30 appointment with her little girl. Before dawn, Ashley read aloud from Pastor Rick Warren's inspirational book, A Purpose-Driven Life. Gradually, she gained the confidence to confront her captor.
I said, you need to turn yourself in, and you need to turn back to God.
And all the time, what is his demeanor like? Is he getting agitated? Is he calmer?
Throughout the evening, he became more calm. He just looked like a different person. At peace, maybe. But I can remember him looking at the TV going, I cannot believe that is me on TV. And I'm like, yeah. You have to ask for forgiveness, and you have to pay for what you did, and you have to get over it, and you have to move on.
About 6 a.m., 4 hours after he'd taken Ashley captive, Nichols decided he needed to ditch the stolen pickup truck and ordered Ashley to follow him in her car. It was the perfect chance for her to escape.
And did it occur to you at this point that maybe I'll pull down that road and try to lose him, or go down this road and jump on the highway and lose him?
It really didn't, because I thought he'll just get away and somebody else is going to get hurt.
Dawn was now breaking as they returned to her apartment, where an exhausted Ashley cooked breakfast.
What did you make?
Pancakes and eggs.
There's almost an intimacy, a softness, a compassion between the two of you.
I just was making him feel normal because I wanted to be treated normal. I was going to let him know all the bad things that I did and let him know, hey, look, I gave my daughter up for drugs.
So you're both sitting there as sinners, talking to each other.
Right. I think sitting at the table then is when he said, you know, I wish that I would have met you under different circumstances and at a different time, because I think that we could have been friends.
Finally, it was 9:30 a.m. Ashley slowly headed for the door to pick up her daughter. Her captor offered no resistance.
He said, will you tell Paige hello for me? I was like, sure. When I got in the car, I was shaking profusely and immediately called 911.
Brian Nichols came to my house at 2 o'clock last night.
SWAT teams surrounded the apartment. Nichols could have escaped, could have kept on running, and very possibly never have been found. Instead, touched by the humanity of a recovering drug addict, he surrendered and later pleaded not guilty to murder charges.
It was a miracle that I made it out of there alive. It was a miracle that no one else got hurt.
She says she's taking life slowly, savoring her days until she is healed. But this time, mother and daughter will face the world together.
I'm blessed to still be here and to be a part of Paige's life. I think about, what if I had died? What that poor child would be going through. But instead, she didn't have to. She goes up to people in the grocery store and says, my mommy's a hero. And I'm like, stop. Don't do that. Don't tell anybody that. Mommy's not a hero. She's just mommy, okay?
You're going to add this into it.
And she smiles. And that is, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
As of 2013, Ashley Smith is happily married, raising 3 children in a blended family and working as an X-ray technician. She says she's finally enjoying the normal life she craved. Brian Nichols was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the 4 murders. Coming up.
My name's Bridget. 7 months ago, I was raped and shot in this field.
A harrowing tale of survival. when we return. Victims of violent crime, the damage can last a lifetime, and often it's not the physical scars that are the most painful, but the emotional ones. As Charles Gibson first reported in 2004, we learn about a remarkable woman who, despite being brutally attacked by a stranger, was able to turn tragedy into triumph.
I remember thinking, am I gonna die right here? I'm 24, this is how my life ends? I did everything I was supposed to do. I locked the door. I had 2 deadbolts. I mean, I did everything right.
A month ago, a monster left her with her face in the mud. Michael Kelly, a well-regarded, widely read columnist for the Omaha World Herald, writing a piece for his paper about the brutal rape of a young woman. Bridget, a first-grade teacher, was kidnapped by a stranger, robbed, shot repeatedly in the back, and left for dead.
5, 10, 15.
This is Bridget, the young woman Michael Kelly was writing about. And this is a story of how the two of them, the teacher and the newspaper man, made something good out of something bad. It started at 3 a.m. on a summer morning. Bridget was alone in her apartment in Killeen, Texas. Her door double-bolted when she heard a loud bang.
And I walked up to the door and looked out the peephole, and I watched a man run at my door and then kick my door in.
He was a complete stranger with a gun, and he wanted money. So they headed in her car for a nearby ATM.
As he's driving out of the parking lot, I'm just trying again to stay grounded and stay focused, and so I just started to pray, Hail Mary, full of grace.
Out loud?
Out loud. I think I wanted him to see me as something human.
Bridget withdrew $200, hoping that would be the end of it, that the young man, he was only 18, would let her go. But he didn't. He forced her back to the car, always at gunpoint.
He began driving away from where I lived, and I became more and more terrified.
They kept driving. He had a specific destination in mind, an empty field beside a subdivision. There was not a soul in sight.
So I just have this mental image, this memory in my mind of coming to the edge of this subdivision and this darkness in front of me and thinking, oh my God, am I ever going to come out of this place where we're going? And I said aloud at that moment for some reason, I said, a lot of people love me.
And you got nothing back.
And I know that was more for myself than for him anyway.
Sure.
And that love that you have from your life, even in a situation as awful as this, it's still with you, you know?
Did it occur to you, Bridget, that the fact that you had seen him, that he wore no mask, that probably put you in greater danger?
Yes, yes. As the situation progressed, I became more and more aware of that, and I was thinking, eventually, he's going to try to kill me because of that.
Time doesn't erase the vividness of this, does it?
No, not at all.
He told her to take off her clothes. Still at gunpoint, she had no alternative. Once naked, she bolted and ran, but the man quickly caught her and then told her to lie down.
As I was getting down on the ground, I said, in a calm voice, is my memory, I said, I'm going to give this to God. I'm giving this to God. As an acknowledgement that this is so far beyond what I can handle. And I got down on the ground and he raped me. Next, he told me to get up, and I did, and he sort of gestured, indicated where he wanted me to stand, and so I was standing with my back to him.
In less than a minute, he fired the gun.
He missed, and I screamed, And then he shot again, and this time it hit me, and I fell to the ground. He walked closer to me and fired again into my back. And then he started to walk away, and I believe that he turned back, and maybe it was sort of an afterthought, it was just for good measure. He shot me one more time.
And there he left her to die. But a remarkable determination and will to live took over. First, Bridget crawled, but that was too painful.
And I just started to say, please, God, just help me, please help me. And maybe it was adrenaline, maybe something else, who knows, but I ran. And I landed on the doorstep of the closest house that I could get to.
It was almost 4 in the morning. A woman inside was too scared to open the door, but she did call 911. Bridget then staggered to the next house and collapsed in a heap.
When I saw her condition, the 2 bullet holes was pretty big, and she was covered in blood and dirt all over her body and stuff, and I didn't think she was going to make it.
Retired Army Sergeant Frank James answered, then covered Bridget and comforted her until police and emergency medical personnel arrived.
If that was my daughter, I wanted somebody else to do the same for her.
She was rushed to the hospital for 6.5 hours of emergency surgery. Had she arrived at the hospital 10 minutes later, doctors say, she would have died. The shots miraculously had missed Bridget's spine, heart, and lungs, but not much else. It is at this point that the newspaper man, Michael Kelly, enters the story. He learned of the attack on Bridget as he sat in his Omaha office the next morning.
Phone rang. Woman's voice.
I'm Detective Sharon Brank with Killeen Police Department. I have some news to tell you.
She said, "Are you the father of Bridget Kelly?" And I knew whatever was going to be said next was not going to be good.
Mike Kelly has covered many rape cases. This time, it was his own daughter.
Bridget Kelly had been brutally attacked, shot, and left for dead. She had made a nearly superhuman effort and managed to get help. Now she was lying in the hospital, and her father, journalist Michael Kelly, didn't know if his daughter would make it. Once again, Charles Gibson.
My first question was, is she alive? And she said yes. And the second question is she going to live? And she said, I think so.
Michael Kelly's publisher supplied a private jet, and he flew, literally, to his daughter's side. She had regained consciousness just before he arrived.
Her normally very lively eyes were open, but they were lifeless. There was no sparkled, as if she had seen hell.
And I've never seen him look so sad, just so sad and distraught as at that moment.
I took her hand and I kissed her hand and her arm and her head.
And he held my hand, and we both started just crying and crying and crying.
It was at this point, just moments after he got to the hospital, that Bridget turned her story over to her dad. She had tubes down her throat and couldn't talk. As he stood at her bedside, Mike told his daughter the man who had raped her had been caught. And he told her his paper would cover the story of the attack.
And I wrote, "Say rape?" ? And he said,
no, because of the policy of our paper and most organizations was not to link the name of a victim with rape.
But that policy made no sense to Bridget, who, when she could talk, urged her father to try and change it.
I said, well, why is it more shameful to be a rape victim than a gunshot victim?
Had you thought that through?
No. At that time, I was just thinking, if that's kind of a significant detail to leave out, and I didn't get why they wouldn't report that. If you're going to tell the story, tell the whole story.
Bridget thought the greater stigma would be to have her name withheld, as if there were something to be ashamed of. So Michael Kelly set out to write Bridget's whole story. In his first columns, he couldn't mention the rape because of his paper's policy. But after a month's discussion, editors relented, and he could, just as Bridget wanted.
The first thing I wrote, I just typed it real fast, and it's looking back at me on the screen. Now you don't have to read between the lines and wonder. My daughter was raped.
Once those words appeared in print, once the story was in wide circulation, there was an outpouring of reaction. Letters, cards, emails.
So many women who had survived rape then came forward. But it was almost as if they'd been waiting for someone to give them the okay to talk about it.
And in a way, it's devastating because you're starting to realize this is everywhere and it's a secret.
It wasn't enough that people had read Bridget's story. She also wanted them to see it, see her. So she made a TV public service announcement.
My name's Bridget. 7 months ago, I was raped and shot in this field.
Took some guts to go back there.
I'm saying, I'm not afraid of this field. I'm not afraid of what happened to me.
After that public service campaign, Bridget says proudly, calls to the Texas rape hotline went up 200%.
I realized that connecting with other survivors like myself, that there was a lot of value to that.
We went with her to her alma mater high school in Omaha. She takes every question, no matter how blunt.
My feelings toward my attacker, good question.
Her attacker, by the way, is in prison for life plus 40 years.
Have I forgiven him? I think God would know that I'm not ready to pray for him and like really mean it. And when other people tell me they're praying for him, I say, thank you, because that's a load off me, you know.
But in the end, of course, there are more tears than laughter.
A year ago, I would have said, I don't think I know anybody who's been raped. You all do. You all know many. And I can say that with certainty now. And now I feel like, gosh, I'm so fortunate, because when you're talking about rape, you find out after you're talking about it that there is this little secret club that you never wanted to belong to. But once you're there, you're glad you're not alone.
Bridget Kelly has moved on to a happy and satisfying life. She's now married to an ABC News producer who she met while working on this story. She teaches first grade and also works with a group which provides emotional support for victims of sexual assault. The man who attacked her remains in prison. I'm John Quinones. Please join us again next time for another edition of 2020 on ID.